This podcast contains descriptions of violence against children and adult language and is not suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Hi everyone, and welcome to Suffer the Little Children, the podcast giving voices back to the victims of child abuse murder and their families. I'm your host, Lane, and this is episode 169, Arabella Parker, Retold, Part 1. 4 years ago, in episodes 16 and 17, I told you the tragic story of 3-year-old Arabella Parker. Because that was so early in my podcasting journey, I'm not satisfied with my coverage of her story, so I'm revisiting it in an all-new, comprehensive retelling as I've never told it before, with the help of her family and others. On October 10, 2019, Arabella reportedly suffered a seizure at her home in Trevorton, Pennsylvania. At the hospital, doctors immediately suspected child abuse based on her multitude of injuries, which included a head injury so severe that they had to remove part of Arabella's brain. Her mother's boyfriend, Jahrid Burgess, was arrested almost immediately. After her mother, Samantha Delcamp, gave multiple conflicting statements to police, to reporters, and even on the Steve Wilkos Show, Samantha was also arrested. When the tiny, beloved red-haired girl died after 6 weeks on life support, Jahrid and Samantha's charges were upgraded to homicide. This is part 1 of the complex, tragic story of Arabella Parker, Retold. Because hers was one of the first stories I featured on the podcast, I've been wanting to retell Arabella's story properly for a long time, but I wanted to wait until the trials were over and the dust had settled before I did. It was also incredibly important to me to go back and tell her story with the help of her family. Arabella meant so much to so many, and their voices deserve to be heard too. In March 2015, Carl Franklin Parker was a 39-year-old single father of 3 who ran his own home remodeling and construction businesses. His oldest son, John, who was fresh out of high school, worked for Carl for a year or so. Carl also employed a young man named Nick Cayley, who was 30 at the time and had been married since November 2013 to a woman 20 years his senior named Bonnie Delcamp Cayley. Bonnie had 4 daughters, Mandy, born in 1986, Sarah, born in 1989, Lucinda, born in 1992, and her youngest, Samantha, was born on October 18, 1995. Carl and Samantha knew each other for a while before they started dating in early 2015, and it didn't take long for things to become serious. They were engaged on April 10, 2015, when Samantha was 19. Despite an age difference of 20 years, Carl and Samantha seemed happy together to begin with. By early 2016, Samantha was pregnant, and on September 20, 2016, in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, she and Carl welcomed their daughter, Arabella Margaret Parker, into the world. The family of 3 lived together in Sunbury, Pennsylvania, surrounded by their respective families, who were all pretty friendly with each other. Arabella was adored by her 3 siblings, Carl's older son, John, his daughter, Amanda, who was 17 when Arabella was born, and his very young son, who I'll call Kay, and who was only a few years older than his baby sister. During Arabella's short life, she lived in at least 4 different homes. From October 2018 until May 2019, Carl, Samantha, and Arabella lived with a convicted sex offender, 76-year-old Harry Young, who was found guilty of sexually assaulting a teenage boy in 1992. Quick sidetrack. That boy was Norman Gundrum Jr., who, in 1993, was convicted of murder at the age of 16. Norm, who had been sexually abused by more than 24 men since he was 8 years old, stabbed another sex offender, Bobby Coop, to death the same night Bobby and some other men sexually abused Norm. He was tried as an adult and sentenced to life in prison, but he was resentenced in October 2019 after a Post-Conviction Relief Act appeal, which allowed people who committed murders as teenagers a chance to seek parole or a new sentence. Norm was released from prison in February 2020. Anyway, while Carl, Samantha, and Arabella lived with Harry Young, Carl's 20-year-old daughter, Amanda, contacted authorities after finding out her younger sister was living with a convicted sex offender, telling them she had heard Samantha would leave Arabella alone with Harry at times. She later said no one would listen to her. At that time, Carl was on parole after spending 13 years in prison for a robbery committed in 1999. That is important because on November 24, 2018, Carl, Samantha, and Arabella were involved in an accident in which Carl was accused of driving under the influence among several other charges. For that offense, Carl pleaded guilty to DUI, an accident involving damage to unattended vehicle or property. Because this was a parole violation, he was sentenced to 6 months probation and 3 to 12 months confinement, which meant Carl was headed back to jail. Some people claim Samantha was actually the driver in that incident, but Carl took the fall for her because she couldn't handle jail. A text message sent from Samantha to a family member seems to support this theory. In the text, Samantha told the family member, "I was the driver. The officers assumed it was him because the truck is in his name, same with the registration, and they smelled alcohol on him and wanted to arrest someone." The family member replied, "You told me 2 days ago while you were drunk that the truth is that it was him driving, but you're a ride-or-die bitch." Samantha responded with, "No proof now, LOL." Either way, Carl entered a guilty plea, accepting responsibility for the accident, and in mid-2019, he was imprisoned in the State Correctional Institution at Cole Township. He gave Samantha permission to sell some of his belongings while he was incarcerated so she could buy things for Arabella and pay her fines for her own previous legal troubles. Samantha's rap sheet included an arrest in 2014 for disorderly conduct, unreasonable noise, to which she pleaded guilty and was fined around $300. She was also ticketed in 2017 and pleaded guilty to operating a vehicle without a valid inspection, driving an unregistered vehicle, driving without a license, and failure to use her turn signal. She was still paying off those fines when Carl went back to prison, which was part of the reason he gave her permission to sell some of his things. Carl and Samantha broke up around that time. Carl's older daughter, Amanda, later said that she stopped talking to Samantha around that time because she quickly went downhill after the breakup. Soon afterward, Amanda began making calls to Children and Youth Services, or CYS, which is Pennsylvania's child welfare agency. By May 2019, there was a case open consisting of multiple allegations that Samantha Delcamp was abusing her 2-year-old daughter, Arabella. The case against Samantha would still be open when Arabella was fatally injured in October. It didn't take long for Samantha to rebound from her 4-year relationship with Carl. She quickly met a young man on social media named Jahrid Burgess, who was born on August 10, 2000, so he was not quite 19 when he and Samantha, who was not quite 24, began dating in June 2019. Samantha and Arabella, who would turn 3 in September, moved into a home on Reagan Street in Sunbury, where Jahrid lived with 4 of his friends. Samantha, Jahrid, and Arabella lived in the attic. By this time, multiple family members were calling to report that Arabella was being abused by either Samantha, Jahrid, or both. Amanda continued making calls to CYS, and Samantha's sisters, Mandy and Sarah, and their mother, Bonnie, had also made reports. On July 16th, Amanda made a Facebook post about her sister's predicament, accusing Samantha and her boyfriend of abusing Arabella. Amanda later said, "I was furious that my sister was in that home. The fact is, no one would listen to me." Authorities frequently visited the Reagan Street home to check up on Arabella. During one such visit, Samantha and Arabella hid in the attic to avoid detection while the visitors were told they weren't home. During a second visit, Samantha said she met with the visiting officers and confessed she had not told the truth about the abuse. Sunbury officer in charge Brad Hare said the police officers made a report about the incident, which later became part of the state police investigation into Arabella's death. Around August, Samantha said, Jahrid wanted to leave Sunbury, so the couple, along with Arabella, moved into their own apartment at 725 West Shamokin Street in nearby Trevorton. Samantha alleged that during their 4-month relationship, Jahrid was extremely abusive to her. Her mother, Bonnie, who Arabella called Mimi, later said that she had seen bruises on both her daughter and granddaughter, which was why she began making calls to CYS. For his part, Jahrid later told police that Samantha was also abusive. Both Jahrid and Carl have alleged that Samantha frequently fell into the trap of substance abuse. In August 2019, Bonnie asked a domestic relations hearing officer for partial custody of Arabella, and a hearing was scheduled to take place on September 5th. With Carl in jail and unable to protect his assets, Jahrid and Samantha reportedly took advantage, selling a large number of Carl's possessions, including electronics, online. Samantha's sister, Mandy, later said that Carl did give Samantha permission to sell his things, and Amanda replied that her father had given Samantha permission to sell some, not all, of his stuff, and only while they were still together, not after she started dating Jahrid. In September, Bonnie made a Facebook post telling Samantha to go back to Carl, saying he was better for Samantha because Jahrid wasn't a man or even a kid. He was just a woman beater and a child abuser. She told Samantha, who she said wasn't the Sam she knew, that because of Samantha's current relationship, her granddaughter had to grow up getting beaten around. The final line of her post was the most powerful. "You choose to let him beat you around. Arabella does not." On September 5th, Bonnie was 27 minutes late for the scheduled custody hearing, which was a meeting involving Bonnie, Samantha, and Northumberland County Hearing Officer Marcia Scoff, as well as an unidentified CYS caseworker. Bonnie had simply gotten the time wrong. The conference summary report stated, "Caseworker indicated they have no concerns with Samantha, but have maintained an open case due to a high number of referrals." The report also stated that Samantha had accused Bonnie of making false allegations to CYS against her. As a result of these factors, the court denied her attempt to gain partial custody of her granddaughter. A month later, Arabella would be ruthlessly beaten for the last time. On the evening of Thursday, October 10, 2019, Samantha and Arabella arrived home from Arabella's speech therapy class, and, along with Jahrid, they sat down to a dinner of cheeseburgers and frozen Salisbury steak sandwiches. What happened between then and the arrival of EMTs is unclear and hotly debated. What is uncontested is that during that time, Arabella suffered a seizure, and Jahrid's mother, Christy Willis, called 911 at 9:51 p.m. An ambulance transported Arabella to Geisinger Medical Center in Danville, where doctors determined that the injuries the little girl had suffered were highly inconsistent with the story they were told by Samantha, Jahrid, and Christy. For whatever reason, the police weren't notified of Arabella's injuries until about 10:15 the next morning. Doctors who examined Arabella Parker determined that the 3-year-old girl had suffered bruised lungs, internal abdominal bleeding, 9 rib fractures, a healing fracture of the tibia, healing fractures of both forearms and one upper arm, healing fractures of both collarbones, multiple bruises all over her face and body, vaginal hemorrhaging, bilateral hematoma, and acute brain bleeding. Her brain damage was so severe that soon after her arrival in the hospital, part of her brain had to be surgically removed. Arabella, who was in critical condition, was given a 10% chance of survival. Jahrid Burgess was arrested by Stonington State Troopers on Friday, October 11, 2019. I'm going to read directly from the criminal complaint, except I'm going to replace victim number 1 with Arabella's name, and victim number 2 with Samantha's to avoid confusion. While at Geisinger, it was determined that Arabella sustained serious bodily injury, to include but not limited to brain injury, multiple broken ribs, hemorrhaging from the vagina, and multiple bruises about the child's face and body. Arabella is currently in critical condition. Samantha, who was in a romantic relationship with Burgess, was interviewed and stated Burgess had assaulted her a minimum of 10 times, and Arabella a minimum of 4 times from July 2019 through October 10, 2019. Samantha further related in July 2019, Burgess smacked Arabella very hard in her stomach. Burgess punched Samantha in the right and left side of her ribs, causing them to break. In August 2019, Burgess pulled his arm back and punched Samantha so hard it broke her bones. On October 6, 2019, Burgess smacked Arabella in the face, kicked and punched her in the back, and stomped on Arabella's stomach area. Samantha believed Burgess broke Arabella's collarbone as it was protruding, and her ribs on both sides were sticking out. Samantha further related that Burgess dumped soda and spit on Arabella in the living room. Burgess then took Arabella and threw her onto the bed and proceeded to punch her in her butt and back. Burgess then took Arabella, threw her in the bathtub. Burgess then pushed Samantha in the tub, causing her to fall on Arabella. Burgess then grabbed Samantha by her hair and dragged her into the living room. Burgess proceeded to punch Samantha in the arms and chest, causing bruising in the chest and on the arms. Samantha believes Burgess broke her ribs and her hand-wrist area. Samantha further related, on 10/10/2019, Burgess grabbed Arabella by the throat, picked her off the ground, and pushed her into the living room wall. She related Burgess put Arabella down on the ground. Arabella then walked away. As Arabella was walking away, Burgess shoved Arabella to the ground, causing her to fall on her hands and knees. Shortly after, Arabella began to have seizures. Burgess was interviewed and admitted to his involvement in this case. Burgess was charged with 3 counts of aggravated assault, 1 count of strangulation, 1 count of simple assault, 1 count of endangering the welfare of children, and 1 count of recklessly endangering another person. Burgess will be arraigned in front of on-call Magisterial District Judge Deal tonight. The report didn't indicate whether Samantha's supposed injuries were examined or documented. I'll pause here for a word from my sponsors. Jahrid Burgess has a criminal record and is by no means a stranger to physical violence. In July 2018, Jahrid was charged with simple assault, felony robbery, theft, conspiracy to commit theft, receiving stolen property, and 2 counts of felony conspiracy to commit robbery while inflicting threat of immediate bodily injury. During the alleged incident, which occurred about a month before Jahrid turned 18, he, along with 2 adult men, Ryan Scholl and Isaac Jensen, were accused of assaulting and robbing a man named Alan Sieberling after confronting the victim because he had some kind of involvement with their friend's girlfriend. Jahrid allegedly pushed Alan, and his 2 accomplices are believed to have knocked the man to the ground, jumped on him, and, when he got away, chasing him. When Ryan and Isaac caught up with Alan, they allegedly struck him again and took his phone. 2 months later, Jahrid was charged with harassment and assault for allegedly smashing his ex-girlfriend's head into the dashboard of a car. The woman, who was about 2 months pregnant at the time, took out a PFA, or Protection from Abuse order, against Jahrid, which was still active when he and Samantha began dating. The ex-girlfriend requested an extension on the order, saying Jahrid was continuing to stalk her, but the request was denied, and the PFA expired just weeks before Jahrid's arrest for Arabella's injuries. One possible contributing factor to Jahrid's propensity for domestic violence is the history of it in his own family. Jahrid's mother, Christy, received multiple PFA orders against his father, James Burgess. According to court documents, in 2010, when Jahrid was 10, James admitted to being abusive and that he had violated past protection orders and threatened to kill Christy. Jahrid's arraignment took place the morning of Saturday, October 12, 2019, while Arabella was still in the hospital on life support. During his arraignment hearing, Jahrid exhibited not an iota of remorse. He told the court he was not to blame for Arabella's injuries and that there was more to the story. He had the audacity to tell District Judge John Gembick that he was insulted by the charges and needed to be released from jail to be with Arabella and Samantha. The judge somehow managed not to laugh him out of the courtroom and instead ordered that if Jahrid did make bail, he was not to have any contact with his girlfriend or her gravely injured daughter. Northumberland County District Attorney Tony Matalovich said this was the worst case of child abuse he had seen in his entire career, adding, "It hits you in the stomach. I am repulsed by what I have seen here. During the Columbus Day weekend, while Arabella fought for her life in the hospital, her family members fumed over the failure of CYS to save Arabella while they could have. Her sister, Amanda, posted on Facebook, "How? I'm lost at words how anyone could ever harm such a sweet, innocent child. And how children and youth just allow things like this to happen and make everyone out to be fucking crazy when there is multiple reports. Maybe if CYS would have did their job and looked into this further and not just let it go, my sister would not be in this predicament. She would not be in the hospital fighting for her life. When her leg was broke, they should have taken her from the home until they investigated it further. But no, they let her stay. You all let this poor little girl down. And I blame the cops too because they were involved as well and just let it go. The system is fucking so fucked up." Bonnie also posted, lamenting to Carl's sister, Lisa Fox, that she knew Jahrid was beating her daughter. She said, "I knew he was beating her too. She didn't want me to know because she didn't want to hurt me. And I told her I know he's putting his scumbag hands on you. Told her it was common, and she knew that. And he knew I knew. That's why he hated me and kept them away from me. Lisa, he told me that Monday I was at his house. He said he was going to fuck up the rest of my life, and I was never going to be the same, and I really didn't know what he meant. Then it happened October 10th. He was going to take her from me, and take Sam too, but in a different way, and he is so right." Bonnie also complained that CYS had ignored her reports and that Jahrid and Samantha always seemed to be one step ahead. "I'm fighting for my little girl until everyone's in jail that failed her. Sorry, if children and youth would have looked in on her when I called, she would still be here. I felt like they didn't give a fuck about her until this happened to her. And no one will ever change my mind. I didn't call them for no reason. I saw bruises on her arm. By the time they had them assholes come check her out, they was gone." Amanda posted a curse-filled rant against Samantha that Sunday, saying, "Oh, shut the fuck up, you stupid-ass bitch. You don't even give a fuck. You show no remorse. And I truly believe you did something to my sister. You've said times before you wish you never had Arabella. What's done in the dark always comes to light. You should be sitting in prison. She literally had no emotions yesterday. She was more concerned about trying to keep me from seeing my sister. I see right through you. You can manipulate everyone else, but not me. No pity from me. Go to hell." Amanda's oldest sister, Mandy, spoke with a doctor over the weekend who told her that Arabella had no brain activity. On October 14th, local newspaper The Sunbury Daily Item published an interview reporter Frances Scarcella conducted on Sunday with Samantha, her mother, and her sisters, in which Samantha said, "She is a happy kid, and a kid that loves to give hugs and kisses. I want her to recover, and even if she can't ever speak again, I just want her with me. Her favorite thing to do is go outside and ride her electric car. She loves being outside, and she never met a flavor of ice cream she didn't like." Samantha told the reporter that since the story broke, she had been afraid. "I've been threatened by people in the community and told I better not walk down the street or they will kill me. Everyone is saying I had something to do with this, and I didn't. No one can understand what I am going through, and no one understands that I did make reports, and I tried to get help to break us free from him." Mandy told the reporter that Arabella's father, Carl, had been made aware of his daughter's situation. She said, "He is devastated about all of this. This whole situation is so sad, and I can't even believe this is happening to us. I'm just in shock." Samantha said the abuse started as soon as she met Jahrid online. While living with him and his friends, she said, "A caseworker came to check on Arabella, and she had bruises, but we were not home when the caseworker came. He didn't want us to be home, so he made us drive around." She said she called the caseworker back and offered to drive down to the county building herself and meet them. "When we got there, they asked me a few questions, and I was scared to tell them anything. I had been warned not to open my mouth." After they moved to Trevorton, she said, "Everything was fine except for some minor things, but then it got bad when he started to tell me he didn't like how Arabella would make a sound when she breathed. He said to shut her up because it would tweak him out." During the incident on October 10th, she told the reporter, "Arabella was on the floor having a seizure, and I crawled next to her. I stayed with her until the ambulance arrived." She said Jahrid prevented her from calling 911 until after Jahrid's mother, Christy, arrived. "I was in the ambulance with Arabella and stayed with her until the morning." After spending the night in the hospital with Arabella, Samantha said, she and Jahrid returned home. He told me that if Arabella didn't make it, that it would be okay because we could have a child. He also told me I better not blame him for what happened, and that if this was all too much, we could have a double suicide. Soon after, she said, they spoke with a CYS worker before state police troopers arrived and placed her and Jahrid in handcuffs. The troopers released her, and she spent the next 8 hours being interviewed. I know I will take backlash for this, but I want my story told because I love my daughter and I want my daughter back with me. I know people think I had something to do with this, and I didn't report this, so I am to blame. But I never thought this would happen, and I and Arabella were both very scared. Samantha said Protective Custody Homes had contacted her since Arabella's hospitalization and offered their assistance. Samantha's final comment in the interview was, "If Arabella could talk to me right now, she would look at me and smile. I just want to see her smile at me." A hearing in Jahrid's case was scheduled for October 15th, the Tuesday after Columbus Day, but Judge Gambick continued it, saying, "It's apparent there is a large public outcry pertaining to this case. With this all occurring over the weekend and my office being closed on Monday, I have had no time to prepare for security and safety measures. I want to be clear that I am continuing this for the safety of everyone, including everyone that also works inside my office and building, which houses a community college and other offices." Public opinion on the case was, as is often the case, fiery and judgmental. Carl's sister, Lisa, posted in defense of her brother, "If it's one thing that always crossed this man's mind, it was his kids. Every time, every breath, he put his heart and soul into each and every one of them. Granted, he messed up at times, but he always put his kids before anyone else. I know my brother is a broken man right now, more than ever. I wish he didn't have to go through any of this. I wish his life were easier." Samantha traveled to Connecticut to film an appearance on the Steve Wilkos Show on October 22, 2019. Steve's show, which as of this recording was just recently picked up for a 16th season, covers topics like domestic abuse, adultery, paternity, teen pregnancy, and badly behaved teenagers, a bit like Dr. Phil. Steve is known for becoming angry at some guests and occasionally throwing and breaking his own chairs. The show's coverage of Arabella's family was highly sensationalized. On the show, Samantha appeared with her mother, Bonnie. Samantha told the story of her and Arabella's abuse at the hands of Jahrid, but the host wasn't having a second of it.
We got home, she was trying to eat dinner, and she ate prior to that, like a couple of hours ago. So she wasn't really hungry, so she was picking at it. And that must have triggered something in his brain, and he went crazy. Picked her up by my boyfriend at the time. And so I was in the kitchen, and I heard a slam, and I came out, and he had my daughter by the throat on the wall.
What did you do?
Started screaming at him, and he put her down.
And then what happened?
And she was walking away, and he picked her up, and he threw her on her couch. And I started going after him, and he pushed me to the ground. And my glasses flew off my face, and I was trying to look for my glasses. And when I got them on, I seen her face plant to the ground, face first, and she was going to a seizure. He told me we're not calling 911 because she already had prior bruises to her on Sunday.
Because she what?
She had prior bruises to her on Sunday.
She was abused on Sunday?
Yes.
By him? What did he do on Sunday?
He was trying to drown her in the tub.
He tried to drown her on Sunday. Then how did this happen a couple days later?
Because I wasn't allowed to go nowhere, wasn't allowed to have my phone or nothing.
How many times prior had he abused her?
Well, they weren't here as bad, but at least 4 times.
When did you start seeing him?
June.
So June, July, August, September, and in October he almost kills her. Did you ever call the police?
No.
The police show up.
They were outside. I seen it from the window.
So you couldn't go to the window and say, "Help!"
It was 3 stories high.
I mean, they had to remove part of your daughter's brain.
And Children and Youth was at my house the same day that happened. Seen me with black and blues and didn't ask her nothing.
So it's their fault?
No, it's not their fault.
Whose fault is it?
Mine.
When the police were there, when there's your parents there, when all these people are there, you're not handcuffed and gagged, right?
No.
You're not stuffed in a footlocker under the bed?
No.
So you could have ran and screamed?
Yes, but you guys don't understand the terror that he put into me.
How long before you got help for?
It was like 45 minutes.
So seizure, and she suffered for 45 minutes without getting medical attention. If I could actually light these chairs on fire right now, I would. I would burn them so you could never sit on it again. Do you think that if your daughter were to recover, and I'll say this, I really hope she does.
She's going to.
Well, let's hope so. Do you think that you should get her back?
Yes.
How would we trust you that you wouldn't put her in a situation? What if another 19-year-old goofball comes along and imprisons you again?
It's not going to happen again because I don't want nobody else.
You're
not in this situation. You don't understand.
No, I wouldn't allow to be in your situation. I wouldn't allow anybody to hurt my children.
You think I allow them?
Later in the program, Arabella's older sister, Amanda, and her mother, Jessica Hamilton, appeared without Samantha's advanced knowledge to confront her about Arabella's abuse. Amanda said,
Samantha is my dad's ex-fiance, and they had a daughter together. After she left my dad, she started going downhill, so we stopped talking. The doctor said that my sister has a 10% chance of living, and if she does recover, she'll probably most likely be in a wheelchair. She'll be tube-fed. I think Sam had a part of it.
Amanda said to Samantha,
That is my sister that you allowed to get.
I did not allow for her to.
Yes, you
think
did.
I wanted this to happen? Are you kidding me?
September 7th.
I did not.
You went back.
Yes, you didn't know what the things that happened between them.
He was there to help you. I called them so many times.
There were so many opportunities that you could have gotten her out, and you did not get her out.
Jessica said,
How about the time when you were out in the car driving around? Wasn't there because he was there with the children youth caseworker. Why didn't you go to a police station?
The day before this all happened, you went to your sister's house by yourself. Why didn't you do something then?
You don't think he was lingering around? He was around.
Get real. Get real. You sound pathetic.
What would he do to you if he found out you said something to your sister or called the police? What would he do to you?
My daughter and I both wouldn't be alive.
Yeah, right.
Her mother, Bonnie, said,
I tried everything I could to get my granddaughter and daughter out of there. And I knew stuff was going on in there. I seen bruises on my daughter and granddaughter. I tried to get my daughter to leave, and he wouldn't let her leave.
But knowing everything that I know, hearing your daughter tell the story today, you don't think she did anything wrong?
I do. I do think she could have got my granddaughter out of there.
This 19-year-old kid who just came in my daughter's life won't allow me, Grandma, to see my granddaughter.
Oh, I went to his house.
And?
They wouldn't let me in. He wouldn't let me in to see her.
What did you do?
I said, I want to see my granddaughter.
And what happened?
They shut the door in my face, and I called the cops.
And what happened?
Not really much.
Your daughter was being abused by a man who came into the relationship as a domestic abuser, and then you see your daughter with a black eye, and you didn't call the police.
Not that time.
But you called the police because he wouldn't let us see your granddaughter.
Mm-hmm. I called the cops and children and youth, and children and youth didn't want to do anything to help me. So I didn't really know.
Why did you call children and youth, though?
For him abusing my granddaughter and daughter.
How did you know about that?
I've seen the bruises on my granddaughter.
When was this?
On the 4th of July.
Oh, so the abuse already had started on the 4th of July. Mm-hmm. Your daughter said that didn't start until months later. Do you feel you did enough to protect your daughter and your granddaughter?
No, I felt that I wanted to do more, but I didn't know what to do.
You had opportunity to get your daughter help. You had opportunity to protect her. Your mother showed up at the door. She called the police. The police were called to your house. You have talked to your sisters multiple times on the phone. You were over at your sister's house. You went to a 4th of July party without your boyfriend. You never did anything.
Well, that's your opinion.
No, it's not my opinion.
Yes, it is.
It's a fact.
No, it's not.
It's a fact.
Okay.
Samantha took a lie detector test to determine if she was telling the truth about Arabella's abuse, but instead of revealing the results, Steve tore them up and threw them at the back of Samantha's head as she stormed off the stage.
I don't need a test to tell me that you failed your daughter. I don't need a test to tell me that when it came to your own daughter who's fighting for life, that you're a coward. I don't need a test to tell me that you're one of the most miserable mothers
Thank
I've
you.
ever.
The host then followed Samantha backstage, continuing to berate her even as she tried to close her dressing room door.
Oh, look at the fight in her. That's the fight everybody wanted to see when you had your daughter. That's the fight. Yeah, look at, she's pushing the door.
Yes, because you're the
fight when you with that guy.
Yes, and I got kicked out of me every single time.
Where was that fight
and
then?
I did try.
No,
and all they did was give me air to get my daughter injured.
You didn't say anything.
Yes, because it was me.
You didn't do anything.
That was my fight between
all this
him and
fight
I.
that you were doing,
yes, that was
you should have been
our
doing
fight.
it
My
then.
daughter had nothing to do with it.
Now your daughter might die.
My daughter, no, she's not going to die. No, it's not because of me.
I hope you crawl into a hole.
Okay, thank you.
And you just go away forever. And
Thank
I hope
you.
you'll never get your daughter again.
Regarding her experience with Steve Wilkos, Samantha later said, "He said he was going to help my daughter and I. That was obviously not the truth." Her mother, Bonnie, added, "It was awful. Steve just berated her the whole time. She took a polygraph test, passed it, and Wilkos ripped it up in front of her face. They told me I couldn't talk about the show or I would go to jail, but I don't care because they were just awful to us. It was just completely awful. This whole situation is awful." Although the Steve Wilkos episode wasn't set to air until November, investigators were also watching. District Attorney Tony Matalovich later said that Samantha's comments on the show confirmed their suspicions and that there were discrepancies in the stories she continued to tell. Samantha Jo Delcamp was arrested on the evening of Thursday, October 24, 2019. According to police, Samantha failed to notify authorities about her daughter's abuse over a period of 4 months, lied to authorities to cover up the abuse and protect Jahrid and Christy, thwarted CYS attempts to investigate abuse reports by leaving the house when she knew they would be visiting, and lied to police on October 11th by telling them Arabella's injuries occurred when she fell while suffering a seizure. Samantha was arraigned the following day on felony charges of endangering the welfare of children, obstruction of a child abuse case, and hindering apprehension for prosecution. She was initially held at Northumberland County Jail, although she was eventually transferred to Center County Prison. Judge Gembick gave her the same order he gave Jahrid. If she was able to post bail, she was not allowed to have contact with her daughter. Real quick, I want to tell you about something that has helped me a lot lately. Making this podcast uses up a lot of mental bandwidth. Editing is the hardest part for me because it's so tedious, and I find it almost impossible to concentrate. It's a lot easier for me since I've started using Magic Mind. Every day, I crack open this tiny bottle and drink it along with my morning coffee, and it's been so much easier keeping my mind on track, motivated, and productive. Magic Mind has given me so much help with focus, concentration, and energy that I even set up a monthly subscription to make sure I always have my little bottle in the morning. It's helped lower my stress and anxiety, too, because it has a natural stress-lowering compound called L-theanine. Magic Mind also contains catechins, which are compounds that extend the effects of caffeine by slowing your body's ability to absorb it. This little green drink has a bunch of other ingredients, too, including matcha, which has a lot less caffeine than coffee, not to mention nootropics and adaptogens, which have a ton of benefits. They improve your memory, ability to process and learn new information, and attention span, lower fatigue, anxiety, and stress, help reduce inflammation, strengthen your immune system, and improve physical endurance and mental clarity. Honestly, Magic Mind has helped me so much, I'd tell anybody to give it a try if you feel yourself lagging mentally some days like I do. Their incredible team has an offer just for my listeners that'll give you 50% off your first subscription or 20% off your first one-time purchase. All you have to do is visit magicmind.com/STLC and use the discount code STLC20. That's magicmind.com/STLC and use discount code STLC20. This 50% off code only lasts 10 days, so make sure you order soon. That's magicmind.com/STLC and use discount code STLC20. Now for another quick sponsor break. The preliminary hearing for Jahrid Burgess took place on October 25, 2019. and revealed a ton of information that had not previously been released to the public. The hearing was held at Northumberland County Courthouse instead of Judge Gembick's Shamokin office due to concerns about safety and security. In fact, all subsequent hearings in the case would also be held in the county courthouse, which was able to accommodate 50 people watching from the gallery, as well as 12 security officers and additional county staffers. Jahrid, wearing a green jail jumpsuit, sat down at the defense table at about 9:30 a.m. next to his court-appointed attorney, Jim Best of Sunbury. The only witness to testify at the hearing was Pennsylvania State Trooper Brian Siebert, the lead investigator on Arabella's case, who remained on the stand for about 2 hours. He stated that Jahrid initially denied causing Arabella's injuries, but later admitted to abusing her so severely she ended up in the hospital. Jahrid told police he lifted Arabella and pinned her against a wall because she wouldn't eat her dinner. He said he then put her down before picking her up again and attempting to throw her on the couch, but she landed instead on the floor and began to have a seizure. Jahrid told police that instead of calling 911, he called his mother, who arrived about 20 minutes later. Trooper Siebert testified that Samantha Delcamp initially told police that Christy was present during the incident, but she later changed her story to match Jahrid's. She also told police about an incident that occurred the previous Sunday, when she said Jahrid threw Arabella first into a chair and then into the bathtub, turning on the water before shoving Samantha into the tub on top of her. When confronted about this in an interview, the trooper said, Jahrid claimed he was upset because he had received a text message stating he was suspected of child abuse. Videos were shown during the hearing of portions of statements both Jahrid and Samantha had made separately to police about the events of October 10th. Trooper Siebert told the court that Dr. Paul Bellino, who examined Arabella at the hospital, said beyond a shadow of a doubt that Arabella had been severely beaten. She had endured 44 separate injuries, including head injuries, broken ribs and collarbones, internal bleeding, and bruises all over her little body. Part of her brain was removed during emergency surgery. The doctor told Trooper Siebert that if Arabella lived, she would have severe neurological issues and could never lead a normal life. In the doctor's opinion, Trooper Siebert testified, Arabella had suffered a series of injuries that indicated a recent history of abuse, including multiple rib fractures in different stages of healing. Some of the injuries had occurred on October 10th, others looked to have occurred 2 to 3 weeks prior, and some were approximately 6 to 8 weeks old. Dr. Bellino stated that Arabella would have been in severe pain when she raised her arms, laughed, or even breathed. Trooper Siebert quoted Dr. Bellino's medical review. Overall, I have no doubt this child is a victim of severe physical abuse. Any reasonable caregiver would have recognized the child was in severe pain. Any reasonable caregiver would have sought help. Members of the Delcamp family, sitting together at the back of the courtroom, couldn't contain their sobs as they listened to the details of Arabella's abuse. During the hearing, 5 photos of Arabella's injuries were presented as evidence by District Attorney Matalovich. Judge Gembick ordered the photos sealed from the public. Also addressed at the hearing was the fact that Jahrid allegedly caused an intentional delay of 50 minutes before 911 was called. All the while, Arabella lay unconscious and bleeding as she suffered an ongoing seizure on the floor. From the onset of the seizure, it took EMS an hour and 7 minutes to begin administering medical aid to the injured child. The trooper testified that he believed Jahrid had abused Samantha, but he also accused Samantha of lying to protect Jahrid and his mother, who was described as a nurse who was called at least a half hour before 911 was dialed. Samantha's phone provided evidence that instead of summoning medical help, someone Google searched the term, "What to do if your child has a seizure." In her initial interview, Samantha had told police Jahrid confiscated her cell phone and wouldn't let her call. During the hearing, Jahrid turned to his mother and told her repeatedly to get a lawyer. Toward the end of the proceeding, Jahrid's lawyer, Jim Best, argued that Jahrid only changed his story after 9 hours of questioning by state investigators. He had originally denied the abuse, telling police Samantha had injured her daughter in a rage after running out of marijuana. Trooper Siebert confirmed that CYS had never accused Jahrid of abusing Arabella. Best told the court that the prosecutor's case was based mainly on Samantha's word, which wasn't credible since she was the only other adult present at the time and was herself accused of child endangerment. In the end, Judge Gambick sided with the prosecution, saying D.A. Manilevich had presented enough evidence to move the case along. All 7 of Jahrid's criminal charges were ordered held for prosecution in Northumberland County Court, and his bail was raised from $200,000 to $500,000. After Samantha Delcamp was arrested, Samantha's oldest sister, Mandy Kegler, put the wheels in motion to get custody of Arabella, who was on life support at Geisinger Medical Center in Danville. In late October, Arabella's dad, Carl Parker, who was incarcerated in the State Correctional Institution in Cole Township for his DUI conviction, wrote a 5-page letter to Northumberland County Court, saying, "There is no excuse for these evil acts and failure to act. I have never been so crushed and sickened within me by the things done to my baby girl. My guilt is not physically being there for my daughter to protect her. I have been unable to grasp an understanding of how morally depraved a person could be who caused this. What Samantha has been unable to see is the decisions she made put her addiction and paramour above our daughter." Carl wrote in the letter that he would not sign over permanent custody, but that he would sign over temporary custody to Mandy, saying, "I have had serious discussions with Mandy, and I trust her." He was adamant in the letter that upon his release from prison, he would resume an active role in raising his daughter, and he wanted to reserve his right to all major decisions regarding his daughter, saying, "I trust Arabella to be released to Mandy Kegler's custody." On October 29th, Mandy was given temporary custody of her niece in an emergency hearing. Mandy later told reporter Frances Scarcella, "I had planned on this last week because I just had a feeling Samantha was going to be arrested. I am at the hospital every day, and Arabella is hanging in. The plan is to take her off the breathing machine and see how she responds. We are hopeful. We will do everything for Arabella." The plan, Mandy said, if Arabella had trouble breathing on her own, was to perform a tracheotomy to help her breathe. "Doctors are hopeful she will breathe on her own, but they also have their concerns, like all of us do." The Daily Item ran a feature on October 30th about Mandy's commitment to her niece. They said that almost every day, Mandy, who was a certified nurse's assistant, drove 20 to 30 minutes each way from her home in Sunbury to the hospital in Danville to be with Arabella. Mandy said, "I just want to be with Arabella as much as possible, because you never know when her last day might be. I work the night shift. I come home, get my kids ready for school, and I'm with Arabella from about 8:30 to 9 a.m. till 1:30 p.m. when I go home to get my son off the bus. I take naps throughout the day." Her mother, Bonnie Cayley, and her sister, Sarah Delcamp, usually took second shift with Arabella, and her other sister, Lucinda, visited when she wasn't working. About Carl, Mandy said, "I give him updates daily, and I will continue to keep him well aware of this situation." When the piece was published, Arabella was still alive, surviving thanks to a ventilator and a feeding tube, but Mandy thought her niece, who was surrounded by blankets and stuffed animals, was aware of what was happening around her. "Her heart rate goes up, and she doesn't like to be touched, but I tell her it's just Mandy, and she settles. I just hold her hand and talk to her as if she was awake. I read to her, play her sound machine, and let her listen to music on an iPad." Mandy told the reporter that she hadn't seen Arabella between July 4th and September 6th, and that visit was only for a few hours. "Then I did not see her until October 10th when all this happened. Sam kept her away from me because she knew I called children and youth." Mandy did not know if Samantha's boyfriend and Arabella's alleged attacker, Jahrid Burgess, had asked about Arabella's condition, but she said his mother, Christy, had tried to contact her a couple days earlier. "I told her never to contact me again because I have nothing to say." The police did, however, which they expressed quite eloquently on October 30th when they arrested Jahrid's mother, 50-year-old Christy Lynn Willis, and accused her of providing multiple false and misleading statements and attempting to stymie the investigation into Arabella's abuse. Jahrid himself admitted to police that he asked his mother to say she was there when the seizure started and that it was caused by a fall. The same day, Christy was led into Judge Gambick's courtroom in handcuffs. Christy told the judge the state police had misunderstood her, saying, "They didn't understand what I was saying when they interviewed me. I can't tell them what happened because I wasn't there." The district attorney told the judge that Christy was making false statements even as she pleaded her case in front of him. Trooper Brian Siebert, the lead investigator on the case, said that Christy had lied in 2 separate interviews, initially telling police that she was sitting at the kitchen table while Arabella ate a sandwich. She said she watched Arabella walk away from the table, fall to the floor, and begin having a seizure, gasping for air. Later in the interview, she told police she was not present when Arabella's seizure began. Police listened to Christy's 911 call and determined that she sounded cool, calm, and collected, displaying no sense of urgency. Christy told the judge that she was not, in fact, a nurse, instead working as a nurse's aide, and that she was taught that when a person was having a seizure to wait 5 to 15 minutes before calling an ambulance. While that is true for someone with epilepsy, for one thing, Arabella didn't have epilepsy, and for another, waiting 5 to 15 minutes is very different than waiting 50 minutes. Even if it wasn't caused by head trauma, which Arabella's was, an untreated seizure can cause permanent brain damage or death if it goes on too long. In this case, the ambulance did not arrive for an hour and 7 minutes after Arabella's seizure began, and D.A. Matalovich told the judge that if Christy had acted more quickly and not tried harder to help Jahrid and Samantha than the little girl, Arabella might have had a chance to recover. Christy said to the judge, "I'm no doctor, but I feel if the ambulance would have come quicker and the EMTs would have secured Arabella better, she may not be in as bad of condition." With a search warrant, police had searched Christy's phone and discovered that while she waited at the hospital on the night of October 10, 2019, she was busy searching the terms injury lawyer and is it possible to suffer injuries during a seizure. Needless to say, Christy was charged with felony obstruction, felony hindering apprehension or prosecution by giving false information to law enforcement officers, and misdemeanor false reporting, and she was transported to Northumberland County Jail, where she was held on $200,000 bail. On November 13th, another hearing took place, this one again in regard to custody of Arabella. Harry Young, the convicted sex offender I mentioned earlier, who Arabella and her parents lived with for a while, actually tried to speak on Carl's behalf at the custody hearing, but Northumberland County Judge Hugh Jones denied his request. This time, Arabella's aunt, Mandy, was granted full court-appointed custody, which gave her the legal right to make any and all decisions regarding Arabella, including her medical care. Mandy said, "I will continue to fight for justice. I don't want to see anything like this happen to any other child." On Friday, November 15, 2019, Samantha and Christy both waived their rights to a preliminary hearing, which meant their cases would automatically proceed to Northumberland County Court. Christy's court-appointed lawyer, Jasmine Smith, asked the judge to lower Christy's bail. That request was denied. I'll pause here for another word from my sponsors. In November, Arabella suffered a stroke, causing her brain to bleed and fill with fluid. Doctors told the family that even if she survived, she would never wake up. They were faced with the decision no family ever hopes to face, whether or not to terminate life support. Her sister, Amanda, left this heartbreaking voicemail for the Steve Wilkos Show.
Hi, Steve. I just wanted to give you a brief update on my sister. A couple days after your show, she had a stroke and her brain started bleeding and filling with fluids. The doctor told us she has not improved and practically told us there is no hope. If she lives, she will never wake up, that she will be like this for the rest of her life. So Monday we made the decision to take her off to a ventilator and see where she goes from there. If she breathes on her own, that's awesome, but if not, we're going to let her go because she has been in a lot of pain and suffering, and they've been drugging her up a lot, and that's just not a life to live. I just wanted to let you know that. Thank you.
On November 15th, the Delcamp family gave an interview to the Daily Item's Francis Scarcella.
Mandy, obviously it just came from the preliminary arraignment, which they waived. Did you know that was? No. You kind of distanced from everything. Just can you tell us a little bit about that?
I don't have anything nice to say to her, so I was always taught
not to say.
Yeah.
Also, during the custody hearing, which you now have full control, with that being said, you leave the custody hearing knowing that now all final decisions on everything are up to you, and this has been very public, obviously. And I'm sure just in the community itself, you walking around, people asking you all kind of questions about this. And can you tell us a little bit about that and what your plans are there?
Oh, well, we talked to the doctor. There's nothing that they can do anymore for her, so we're just gonna take her off life support. We decided to do it on Wednesday.
So these days leading up to that, or you'll be up at the hospital every day, it's very hard. So you said the doctors, you had conversations with them, and there's pretty much, did they say what will happen when that happens?
She'll go peacefully because she's not breathing at all anymore. The machine's doing all the work.
Samantha's sister, Sarah.
Something else happened during this time period with another child in another state, correct? So do you want to tell us about how that came to be?
Well, Sarah saw it on Facebook.
I saw that a child on Facebook needed a liver. So when we spoke today to the Gift of Life, I brought this child up, and they're going to see if this child still is in need of a liver. No, they're going to reach out to them when they get back to their office. Right. I talked to Sam, and we still talk every night. Actually, she calls me, and we've had conversations about what she did wrong, and she knows she did wrong, and regardless, I'm going to be by her side, and she knows that.
Is she taking responsibility for these things?
Yeah, she is. She knows she should have gone, but just didn't.
Samantha's sister, Lucinda.
My thoughts are the same as Mandy's. I mean, she did wrong. You pay for your consequences, as they all should. Everybody involved should.
Samantha's mother, Bonnie.
Of course I'm going to stand by her. She's my daughter. And I understand she did wrong. But she's still my daughter, and I'm still standing by her. I don't care what anybody says. You can hate me, whatever. I don't care.
Yeah, but her choices and her life made us lose our niece.
Yes, it did.
I mean, what would you say to the community? Because obviously you read, and I know we have talked about this even off the camera, that, I mean, the community, it's hard to understand what's going on, on inside your family and stuff like that. So what would be your message to the community on this part of it for your family here?
Samantha's sister, Mandy.
Don't say hateful things because you're not in the situation. You clearly don't know everything that's going on. You don't know how she is, how she's been struggling for the past 30-some days. So you don't have really anything to say negative.
On November 19th, the night before Arabella would be removed from life support, her older sister Amanda posted, "My heart is very heavy tonight. You always clung to me when I was around, and always up to something so mischievous. You would always give me kisses on my cheeks, run up to me laughing and smiling when I came over, and give me a hug. You and my daughter loved each other, and surprisingly got along so well for your guys' age. She would follow you around and mock everything you were doing. You two were so much fun to watch together. I'm going to miss that little giggle. When you would sleep over, you would have me rub your stomach till you fell asleep, and you would always fall asleep right on me and stay that way almost the whole night. Kay always asks about you and says how he wants to see you, but there's just no words to tell a 6-year-old what has happened. He loved being your big brother and was always so happy when you came around. You were just so full of light. I will always wonder all the what-ifs. I'm going to miss every single thing about you. You were just so special. I wish I could understand why anyone would do something so cruel to you. But all the precious memories I do have with you, I will carry very close to my heart. I love you, Arabella, more than you will ever even know." 2 candlelight vigils were held on the evening of November 19th. One was in Trevorton, where Arabella had lived with her mother and Jahrid at the time of her injuries. The other vigil was held at Memorial Park in Danville, not far from the hospital where Arabella had spent the past several weeks. More than 100 people attended to pray for Arabella, including her Mimi Bonnie, Bonnie's husband Nick, and her aunts Mandy, Sarah, and Lucinda. Pastor Mark Gittins of the H2 Church in Sunbury, who had become close with the family during their ordeal, spoke at the vigil.
We came to honor her life, to let her know that we stand with her tonight, and that this kind of violence has no place in our community.
Amen. To a reporter, the pastor said,
This is important to me because I believe that, the kids belong to us as a community and our obligation and responsibility. And this is just really to demonstrate that reality, that this stewardship, that the children belong to us and we have a responsibility to keep them safe. And this did happen on our watch. And we didn't, this breaks my heart because, the father and it just is, seeing that this could happen in our community is just, it's heartbreaking.
Members of the Just Us Few Motorcycle Club also attended. Member Paul Bingaman said,
to deal with a child, and especially in this situation, we want to support the family, the friends, the community, however we can help out. We're always willing to give that helping hand.
On November 20th, 2019, Arabella was removed from life support. Her head had been shaven when part of her brain was removed in October, leaving just 3 little red braids on the left side of her head. Bonnie held her granddaughter's hand and took photos showing Arabella's fingernails painted with pretty purple glitter polish. Just after Arabella was taken off life support, Pastor Mark Gittins, who Mandy had invited to be with them at the hospital, sat with the little girl, holding her hand and playing music for her. Miraculously, while he sat with her, Arabella opened her eyes and began breathing on her own. Pastor Gittins said, "She looked right at me. I sat there and I prayed and spoke with Arabella, and all I kept saying to her is, 'I'm sorry.'" That afternoon, both Carl and Samantha were allowed to call the hospital room and speak individually with their daughter by telephone. For the next 2 days, Arabella continued breathing on her own, and her health improved slightly. Her Aunt Sarah slept Thursday night next to her. On the morning of Friday, November 22nd, Arabella's condition quickly deteriorated. Arabella struggled to breathe, but doctors were able to make her comfortable. At 1:22 p.m. on November 22, 2019, Arabella Margaret Parker took her last breath. Mandy later said, "I held Arabella until she passed away. I'm just so heartbroken and sad right now. I'm completely devastated over this. None of this should have happened. I wanted custody of Arabella in case of recovery because I wanted to give her a good home." Amanda said of her sister's passing, "I am glad I got to spend time with Arabella. My whole body is just weighed with so much sadness. There are really no words to explain how I'm feeling right now." Sarah said, "I am heartbroken over this. I spent all these days next to her side, and I will miss her terribly." Pastor Gittins left the room right before Arabella passed, but spoke with the family first. He later said, "My heart is broken right now. I told the family before she passed that as painful as this is to watch, we have done something special here. We have made Arabella's name well known. If anything is going to change, and if this girl's suffering means something, then her death will see so many more kids' lives saved. This will make everyone look twice and go the extra mile. We don't want anyone to ever go through this. We all need to look, listen, and care." Northumberland County District Attorney Tony Matalovich had previously said he would file homicide charges if Arabella died. The day she passed away, Matalovich told a reporter that the situation was tragic, but he could not discuss details of the case. On Friday morning, prior to Arabella's death, Jahrid Burgess, dressed in prison orange, sat down for an exclusive interview by video with Daily Item reporter Francis Scarcella, during which Jahrid denied causing Arabella's fatal injuries, although he admitted he had slapped Arabella and her mother, Samantha, at times when they were not following the rules. He said, "Yes, I hit Samantha, but I did not do all of those things to Arabella." Jahrid recounted his version of the events of October 10th to the reporter, saying that a CYS official visited their home at noon, examined Arabella, and said she was fine. Jahrid said he left the home to go to work shortly after that, leaving Arabella in Samantha's care, although he said Samantha was frustrated because she had run out of marijuana. Jahrid claimed that at the time he worked at a coin shop in addition to running his own pawn shop online. In actuality, it appears he was selling things on Facebook. His last Facebook post before his arrest was the sale of a Samsung Galaxy Note cell phone. Jahrid said he arrived home at about 8 p.m. after picking his mother up from work. He, Samantha, and Arabella were eating dinner, but Arabella wasn't eating. Samantha, he said, was standing at the kitchen sink when she became enraged over her daughter's refusal to eat. She picked her up and threw her across the room where Arabella hit part of the couch and landed on the floor where she hit her head. At that point, he said, the little girl began having a seizure, at which point he told Samantha she needed to fix this, and they researched information on what to do if a child was having a seizure. Then, Jahrid said, he called his mother, Christy, who had just left her home to go back to work, and she arrived shortly afterward and almost immediately called 911. They went to the hospital, he said, and the next morning, when they returned home, he and Samantha discussed how they would have each other's backs when police came to question them. She had stuff on me, and I had stuff on her. I was getting blackmailed. I was selling her baby daddy things while he was in prison. Jahrid insisted he did not raise a hand to Arabella on that day, telling the reporter that the most he would have done to discipline her during his 4-month relationship with Samantha was slap Arabella's rear end for not following the rules. He said, I told Samantha there were rules, no drugs, clean up after yourself, and Arabella needed to use the potty. Before they moved to the apartment in Trevorton, he said, he did hit Samantha. I drug her up the stairs by her hair once, I admit that. I also punched her in the arm. He also said he may have slapped Arabella in the mouth because she was chewing her fingernails. Jahrid said that CYS workers visited them, both at the Sunbury home and at the Trevorton apartment, up to twice a week, and that he was interviewed by caseworkers. He said he and Samantha routinely lied to them. Samantha had said she was so afraid of Jahrid that she couldn't tell anyone about the abuse, but Jahrid told the reporter, she could have left at any time. I hit her a few times, yes, but I did not do all the things she is saying. On the Sunday prior to Arabella's fatal accident, Jahrid said, he got angry with Samantha and Arabella and made them walk back and forth across the living room, military style, because they weren't following his rules. I watched football on my phone. I told Samantha from the beginning it was my way or the highway. He told the reporter he paid all of the couple's bills and money was never a struggle, although his mother, Christy, told police she was headed to the apartment on the evening of October 10th to give him rent money. If I had to do something different that night, I would have gotten her weed, or I would have taken Arabella or went for a walk. Jahrid said he feared for his safety in jail, where his only protection was provided by the guards. Listen, do you hear the world's smallest violin? The day after Arabella's death, the Steve Wilkos Show posted on Facebook, a devastating update. We at the Steve Wilkos Show are so very sorry to hear Arabella Parker has passed away. Our condolences to her family during this difficult time. On the same day, Arabella's older brother, John, posted, I remember Jahrid when he was a little kid. I could never stand that demented little shit, always feeding off the drama and problems of everyone around him. Always egging people into a fight and using his stances to his advantage. Since the day I met him, I always had a horrible feeling about him, but I never suspected he'd make such an impact on my life. I hope he does get the death penalty. A friend commented, I am so sorry for your loss, John, and that your family has to go through this because of some POS. I agree, he was always a messed up kid. Me and him grew up in the same neighborhood, and he was always causing problems. I have a scar on my knee from him from when he threw a metal rod at me when I was like 10 years old. But prayers to you and your family. I'm always here if you need anything. John replied, Thank you so much, and he used to be loud as fuck outside of my house in the middle of the night when I had to go to work the next day, and he used to always pick fights with my brothers. Montour County Coroner Scott Lynn performed Arabella's autopsy on the afternoon of Monday, November 25, 2019. During the autopsy, he determined that Arabella's kidneys were injured prior to her admittance to the hospital, which meant they could not be donated as they were considered evidence in the investigation. The Delcamp family had hoped to donate Arabella's organs. Sarah had begun researching other children in need of organ donations. After receiving the news, Sarah told a reporter, There was nothing we could do. It is all sad. The whole situation is sad, and it just continues to keep going. All we wanted to do was help another child, and we just continue to find out more and more. Amanda was also disappointed about this turn of events. I understand that it is part of an investigation. I just wish my sister could have saved another child. After a court hearing in late November, Jahrid had some choice words for a news reporter.
You had a lot to say in court.
Yeah, because liars.
Why?
It's all hearsay, and to a drug addict and lying piece of
You said it's all Samantha.
Yeah.
You didn't do anything?
So you read the paper?
Yeah.
That right there.
The Delcamp family granted the Daily Item another interview, and they had various opinions on the situation. Sarah said she didn't believe Jahrid's statements in his Daily Item interview. He is a liar. I don't believe anything he says. Mandy said, charge them all and let them all pay the consequences for what they did. I'm 100% behind the police and the district attorney in finding out every person that was responsible for this. Sarah said, I think homicide is far-fetched for my sister. She didn't do any of that stuff, but I do think she is just as guilty for allowing this to happen. She is still my sister, and I love her. Obviously, she has made a million bad decisions here, but I will be there for her. Bonnie said, she stayed there with him, and this happened. She should be charged with something, but not homicide. Bonnie wished she hadn't been late for the custody hearing in September. If that hearing would have been held, maybe none of this would have happened. Mandy added that she will work with DA Tony Matalevich in any way to make sure everyone who had a hand in Arabella's death would be held responsible. I don't care who the person is. I want answers, and I want to make sure those that were around Arabella, no matter who they are brought to justice. Mandy said she no longer spoke to Samantha. It's my sister, but I am just done. As for Jahrid, I don't care what he has to say. There's a lot more of Arabella's story to cover, so I'm going to end here for this week. In the next episode, I'll tell you the rest of Arabella's story, and in the episode after that, you'll hear my conversations with some of the people closest to the case. My sources for today's episode were the Sunbury Daily Item, Fox 56, WKOK, Penn Live Patriot News, Facebook, the Milton Standard Journal, the Pennsylvania Unified Judicial System portal, and the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections website. Shoutouts to my newest patrons. Thank you to my lovely friend Phyllis S. from the Bronx, New York, Carrie W. from Laverton, Victoria, Australia, Amarin A. from Phoenix, Arizona, and Jasmine P. from Cockshut, Shropshire, England. Also, a very special thank you to Ayame from Terminus. I appreciate you all so much. If you'd like to help me devote myself full-time to the podcast, you can make a monthly or annual pledge at patreon.com/stlcpod. Thank you all. That's it for this episode. Join me next time for part 2 of Arabella's story. If you like the show, please follow or subscribe to Suffer the Little Children on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Spreaker, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast listening app. And please leave me a 5-star rating and a positive review on your favorite podcast platform. Visit the website at sufferthelittlechildrenpod.com. You can support the show by visiting patreon.com/stlcpod, where you can become a patron for rewards ranging from a shout-out by name on the show to bonus content and exclusive gifts. You can also support the show at ko-fi.com/stlcpod. Follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram at Suffer the Little Children Pod and on TikTok at STLCpod. View photos related to today's episode on Facebook. This podcast is researched, written, hosted, edited, and produced by Lane. Intro theme music is by Dream Note Music, and all music for the show is licensed from audiojungle.net. For more information about preventing or reporting child abuse, visit childhelp.org or call your area's child abuse hotline. And remember, if you see something, say something.